What's going on, everyone? This is podcast number 34. I am joined today behind the camera with the great and powerful David Morguson, sporting a sweet shirt. And then Jeremy Gross is also back. So we got him good and intoxicated, so he's not going to be nervous at all. So today we're going to cover like a unique topic that we touched on before, but I think there's been a lot of talk and hype about it here lately, with a lot of the news coming out about several fighter pilots seeing unidentified objects, and then you had the Bob Lazar documentary on Netflix, and then after that he was actually on the Joe Rogan program. So pretty much after we started doing this podcast, not only do I listen to it, but I think all my friends listen to it. I think I've probably recommended it so many times that it's probably made them sick at this point. So when there's a good one on, I'll try to send somebody a message and say, hey, you got to check this one out. And so this one actually generated enough conversation that we wanted to kind of do a standalone podcast of our own about it to give just, I guess, our normal everyday impressions of it. So I'm going to start the podcast here. And, since Gross is our guest, I'll give him the floor first. So, first of all, what did you think about, let's generalize a little bit more. Bob Lazar, do you believe that what he's saying is truthful?
Yeah, I do.
So, was it a combination of the documentary and the podcast, or was there one or the other that made you kind of believe?
I think you could take things out of both. Just he seems like he has too much knowledge to be making it up, I guess. Yeah, is what got me.
So at least he's smart enough to bullshit us.
Yeah, maybe it may be the case.
to not know the truth. So, David, you're a little bit more skeptical typically. What is your opinion of Mr. Lazar? Do you think he's being truthful in what he's saying?
No, he may have been a janitor up there or something. But there's like a couple of things. Like I was watching a documentary that like there's one thing like kind of did like when he was talking about the finger, the machine that measures your bones in your fingers to get in, and they showed it to him, and they're like, here, this was from this place. And he was like, that's what I've been talking about. No one believes me. I believe that part. Like, there's some parts of it that, obviously, he knew a lot, like, too much about it not to have been there. But, I don't know. I don't really. He just sounded like a whack job. And then on the Joe Rogan podcast, he kept talking about his migraines. Then when you watch the documentary, you find out more about the guy, and no one knows he went to these schools that he said he went to. But, the government could have. I'm sure they would have, like, if they were going after him, if anybody could, it'd be the government and
right.
Erase your things. But at least he would have classmates, so they would have been like, yeah, that dude was in my class, or something like that.
In the documentary, they said that there was two guys that testified.
But that dropped him off.
Yeah, but not...
Yeah. It's like his friends that dropped him off.
But how many people are actually smart enough to get into those,
Yeah, not a lot.
Yeah, so.
But, they would be... The people that are, though, they're probably, like... big enough scientists you could find somewhere, you know what I'm saying? Like, get on LinkedIn or something and check it out.
You know what debunked that for me, though? Like, when he said the documentary, you think they hired me straight out of high school?
Yeah.
You would have to have some kind of, degree and
knowledge. But I don't know if he actually did the stuff there that he said he did, though. That's what I think.
That was pertaining to the Los Alamos place. That wasn't actually S4. So, they were able to produce the phone list that showed Bob Lazar on that.
Yeah, Los Alamos. But it didn't say what he did, though.
What about the polygraph test that the independent guy...
Oh, I 100% always believe this. Polygraph tests are bullcrap.
Do you think you could pass one?
I don't know if I could pass it or fail. I'm sure,
that's a good podcast idea right there.
Yeah. But they're unreliable. That's why they don't use them in court of law and stuff like that. There's too much margin of error. Anybody, somebody could pass, be good enough to pass one. Especially someone that's been telling the story since, 1989. Whatever. I'm sure that he actually probably believes it in his head now.
So what I think I was kind of skeptical at first, too, especially when it comes to the podcast, because I actually even... text one of my buddies that had mentioned the Bob Lazar podcast to me, and I put migraines in quotations because I thought that was pretty hokey. But when it really came down to it, the fact that George Knapp had done so much research and had verified, he said he essentially he was who he said he was through so many different sources, that kind of changed my mind because, aside from whatever that dude's name was that said he dropped in the helicopter that got on fire or was under fire, was that Matt Lauer or whatever? Aside from that guy, it seems
Brian
like
Williams, wasn't it? Said that.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Matt Lauer was the
Yeah,
guy
don't let
that-
Matt Lauer come after you. Well, actually, he got fired too.
He got fired for one of them got fired for sexual harassment. But aside from something like that, it seems like most people kind of want to verify their sources before they release something, so they're not made out to be a clown.
But George Knapp, let's go to this. He hosts this show called Coast to Coast AM. I watch it a lot, listen to it a lot. Been a huge fan since I was a little kid. But it's like all like insane people on it. They're talking about like Bigfoot, talking about like their kids and alien, talking about like people coming through walls. He hosts shows like that, and that's like his thing. I mean, that's not credible to me. It's just I hear all these crazy people all the time.
But do you
on
think
those
he
shows.
believes those people? Like, do you think that he would stick
I'd
up?
say he believes some of. I'd say they believe some of these people, but I mean, just like anybody else, I would listen to it. Like, some stories are believable, but most of them, like their cat's ghost or something, it's not believable.
So gross. Is there anything in the back of your mind that says, okay, he could be lying? Like anything that gives you pause, like the migraines or anything?
Oh, definitely the migraines. That drove me nuts when I was listening to it. And then, I listened to the podcast first, so I didn't know what he looked like. And then once I look at him, I was like, this guy might be a little crazy. He might be a little out there, but everything he says, I don't know, something makes me lean on the side of believing that.
It was like kind of the opposite for me. Like it was like when I saw him on the podcast and he was talking about his migraines. First of all, I was like, man, that's a great thing. So if I ever screw up in one of these podcasts, I go, sorry guys, this is my migraines. But and we don't have Jamie to pull it up, so
we got some booze though. We just need to give you more booze.
But so that was the first thing I thought. And the second thing I thought was, he was probably trying to gather his thoughts. But after he mentioned the migraines, from that point on, like everything that he said was like he didn't pause, didn't mention them again. But when I saw him in person, like I feel like I can, even just looking at a person and watching them speak, I feel like I get a pretty good impression of him, and like he at least believes what he's saying. I'm not saying that he's wholeheartedly telling the truth, but he at least believes what he's saying. And for me, I haven't given my opinion yet. I think he's telling the truth in his own mind. Whether it's the truth of actually what's happening or what happened back then at S4, I don't know. But I truly believe that that he is telling the truth as at least as to how he sees it. So before we step any more into Bob Lazar, I feel like that we would do everybody listening to this a great injustice by not telling them at least what our beliefs are if we are alone or not in the universe. So I'll let Gross have the last one, so I'll let you have this one, Mr. Alien Shirt.
Oh, okay.
Do you believe that there are other things out there in the
Yeah, I think that we've mentioned this on the podcast before. There has to be something else out there. The universe doesn't end. There has to be aliens out there, but the part I don't know is if aliens and UFOs, if they cross over, if they're the same thing, and if what's in a UFO could be like a government spacecraft. Like, I don't know exactly for sure if they've been here or if they are here, but I know they exist. I mean, I don't know they exist, but I have a good idea they exist. But.
And I've said before as well that I believe that there is something out there. I don't think that you can have an infinite, galaxy universe and galaxy as big as ours and not be something else out there. Like, the likelihood of there not even being some other type of life in our Milky Way galaxy is pretty slim to my little pea brain. So, Gross, we'll give you the main event on this one. What is your opinion of it?
I absolutely think there's other stuff out there. I don't know if they're little 3-foot aliens with big ass eyeballs running around or nothing, but I think there's got to be other life forms out there. But it's kind of like the ocean. We got 75%. We don't know what's in it. We don't.
Yeah.
The ocean scares me, by the way.
The ocean is scary.
I remember back in the day, we've both been on vacations to the ocean together, and back in the day, you used to swim out to buoys and stuff like that. Not anymore.
No, I know.
Well, we floated out to one time, bought that little boat.
We'll be in Destin in 2 weeks, and I'll be scared to put my toes in the water.
Then, right after that, we went on the dock and we looked down, and that guy's like, "Oh yeah, that's a whatever jellyfish, and it's deadly." And we're like, "Okay."
It's about as big as this table, and I was like,
stay on the water about it.
The one thing that I will say though about this is why I like the subject, because people all have these stories about extraterrestrials, by aliens, or something else different. But everybody's got these stories about them. It's not just one person says it and then like another person. You know, I don't. There has to be some kind of truth to what everybody says. Maybe it's not the whole truth, like what you hear someone saying, but I don't know. That's what piques my interest about it. That there's a good possibility that they could have been here or could be here, but I mean, I don't have any way of telling. I mean, I guess like the biggest way like to prove it would be like, you know, you're hearing these stories come out from big media places now, like New York Times, or like you know, even you're watching Fox News earlier about those clips. Those wouldn't have been on any like.
It was on CNN.
Yeah. Those wouldn't be on, like have been on anything like that. Sound like a joke or something like that. Right. But it's getting credibility. I mean,
well, let's before we step into the entire vast array of all of that. So I want to talk about the element 115. So he brought that up, and you know, we know that it's on the elemental chart. It wasn't on the elemental chart 30 years ago when he brought it up the first time, but now it is. And you still don't personally believe that, you know, gives any credibility or lends any credibility to what he's saying?
No.
How do you think he could have known about that back then?
He couldn't. Like, there's no proof that it actually came from there. There's like no proof that the S4 place even did what he says it did. There's no proof of that coming from that. You know what I'm saying? It's just like could have just guessed about that.
Well, what about the fact that when the Germans that got it on the elemental chart that recreated it in you know, human-made form, which it eventually you know, it fell in on itself. It wasn't sustainable. It degraded very quickly. But what about the fact that they actually consulted him whenever they were doing that?
See, that's why I don't know if they actually did consult him. There's no like way of telling that he actually did.
Yeah. So
I just imagine that guy riding around, and you remember the documentary, and he's got this bicycle with the jet engine on it, and he's like going in little laps around.
Yeah.
And then like some like guy in a lab coat pulls up to his house and is like, "We need your help. One last go around." I think he probably pictures that in his head though.
Yeah, I mean, because they showed that little test of the what was it called, the cloud test or whatever, and the rumor is that he stole the element from the lab. What are your thoughts on that, Gross? I mean, do you think that lends more credibility to the story, and more importantly, do you think he stole some of it?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Okay.
I think if he really stole something, I don't know if he'd be around today. You know what I mean?
He's
like,
still getting raided, and so, you know, and he wouldn't answer the question if he thought that that's what it was about, really.
Yeah.
So that was kind of.
But what was he shipping? Was it radioactive material, and that's why he got raided?
I don't think it was radioactive. They deemed it dangerous. A customer had ordered some type of dangerous substance.
Yeah.
So, I'll kind of speak on it a little bit more. So to me, I kind of can see it either way. As far as the element goes, the fact that he knew about it 30 years ago, that tells me that there's some type of credibility to his story. However, the thing that threw me for a loop is that when he talked about it, he said that they had traced it to a specific star system, a specific planet. Like, if it's not our elemental chart, how could they possibly know, you know, where it came from, unless they, you know, were waterboarding aliens in another room and
so
got that
it came
information.
from Zeta Reticula.
Well, he didn't claim to know that's where it came from, did he?
He
said it was in his. I think it was in his briefings.
Yeah. But like I guess they can, according to Mr. Tyrell, they can track elements in space by the color that they emit. But if it's not known to us, I don't see how we could possibly know that. So that's the part that kind of threw me for a little.
Well, another part when this podcast, which made sense, as he was talking about, which covers him too, as he said that, which makes sense that they would put fake stuff in the like and stuff he would see, just so like they know if he leaked it ever, where it came from, and I mean that was a pretty cool thing.
It makes sense that they compartmentalize stuff too, right?
Yeah.
Like, because everything's going to get out, but like they always say, the thing that they have going for them most is that nobody believes it. Like, you know, nobody's going to say, hey, yeah, we believe there's flying saucers, or yeah, we believe that you're working on a propulsion system, or yeah, we believe that you're working on some type of weapon system from, some type of UFO. What about the fact that he actually took people out to the site? What do you think about that? Because did you ever watch Joe Rogan Questions Everything?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so there's a specific place you can supposedly go and see some of the test stuff, and that's moved back considerably since the 80s whenever all this stuff came out, because I guess they essentially took the land from all the people to broaden it out. But I think it's kind of a cool story that he took people out there to show them these systems, that he got the film, which is still on YouTube and stuff today. But the fact that they didn't produce or interview any of these people that saw it, I thought that was kind of weird. What did you think?
Another thing is weird to me. He kept saying, they don't tell you nothing. You can ask questions. They only tell you what you need to get your. Well, then why did they give him the schedule of the test flying thing? I thought that was kind of weird. Why does he need to know when the flying schedule is?
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
so that was another thing that kind of made me think. Maybe it's.
I guess with the fly test, if you're working on a propulsion system, you might be able to watch the flights that they're doing where they're trying to recreate how this system would fly, and you might be able to, something might click with you as far as how it propels itself. That's the only thing that I can possibly think of. I can definitely see a government system having everything compartmentalized to keep everybody from knowing the full picture, because it seems like the government only tells us what we want to hear or what they want us to hear for everything. So I can definitely see that being.
I don't know if he really said if they gave him the schedule or did he just happen to find it. I don't know. He didn't really go into much detail about that either.
Those guys, because a lot of those guys probably have the ability to look at something and kind of make a mental map of it or mental note of it.
He's like, they could tell you to look forward, and I'm like, I'd be like, what are they gonna do? Smack in the back of the head or something? Yeah. Shoot you?
I guess if you could supposedly sneak out some of the element, you could supposedly sneak out.
Yeah, I feel like a government place, even in the 80s, would have checked everything, especially in the 80s with the Cold War and all that.
Like if they didn't want you to see shit, they'd have blindfolded you or something and walked you to a room, and then.
In the height of the Cold War, it would have been.
Well,
I don't know.
Don't you think, though, that at some point in time, after several months of being there and working on these systems and everything like that, that they would probably loosen the reins a little bit too? I mean, he said that his lab partner essentially lived there, which I always picture the dude from Independence Day with the long hair and the lab coat.
Yeah.
I picture him living there and all that stuff. But I mean, don't you think that eventually, once you became a good fellow, that they would kind of let you see a little bit more?
No, I don't think so. But he talked about that though when he actually first saw the UFO and they took him to see it, and he said he tried to touch it and there was the force field and.
That wasn't the craft. That was with the system.
Oh, I thought it was actually the first time he saw the craft, and he got the.
I think he touched the craft.
He said he tried to, and the guy got mad at
him. But the force field part was about the propulsion system itself. He said that it had a dome on top of it that didn't have any metal, but when you tried to push your hand to it, that it would shove it away.
Gravity at 180 or something. So that's what he said.
Well, he said it was an anti-gravity thing. So essentially.
Which they couldn't recreate.
Yeah. Essentially, what he said was that it I guess interrupted the time and gravity in front of it, and he used if you have a bowling ball in your bed and you push your hand down, the bowling ball is going to move forward. So, disrupting that time and gravity in front of you to be able to travel. See, to me, when I look at the story in little tidbits like the migraines or. The star system and all that stuff. It's kind of difficult for me to see all of that as being a true story. But obviously, the dude's smart enough to make, a jet car in his own, driveway. So he knows a little bit something about propulsion. He owns his own lab now. So obviously, he has some type of accreditation to be able to do that. So to me, when I look at it as a whole with all the things that he said, with all the things that he's done, and then a lot of the things that have come to pass and to light afterwards. I mean, even if you just want to use the biometric machine as an example, how could he have possibly known about that until they declassified the B-52?
Yeah.
And the stealth bomber.
He could have been a janitor there. I mean, they wouldn't just hire a regular person. They would have to hire someone that's pretty smart to be a janitor.
No.
He could have been anything.
They're not going to hire some dude there that
Why
builds
not?
freaking rocket cars and be like, hey, you want to come mop the floors?
Yeah,
and he's
yeah.
going to be like, yeah, I don't want to build rocket cars anymore. I want to go mop floors in some
He didn't go to
secret
MIT to do it, so I mean, they wouldn't just hire some kid to do it. And then that guy's been saying he went to MIT too. So
Well,
You got to think about a rocket car in the 80s. That's
Yeah.
like anybody could probably do that
you all
now.
saw
but-
him in the documentary, that little rocket bike he had. He had like looked like he got on YouTube and got the instructions on how to do it. It's like a little battery, and he's like, and that was just going like 5 miles, like less than 5 miles per hour.
But there was no
rolling in.
YouTube in the 80s, let's be honest.
Yeah.
There's
that
hobby
came out,
magazines.
that came out of his head.
There's like hobby magazines for stuff like that. I mean, he could have been actually really smart with stuff like that, but he didn't go to MIT to reverse engineer.
Well, he didn't go to MIT to be a janitor either.
I mean, he didn't
work
go
at
to
Los
MIT
Alamos.
at all. That's what I'm trying to say.
But that's what
He could have just been a hobby. That's how he got the job, because he liked that kind of thing, but he didn't have the. You know what I'm trying to say? Like he liked that kind of atmosphere, like rockets and stuff, but he didn't have a degree to do it. So he got in there. It's like a janitor, maybe like, or maybe I don't know.
So what's more likely? What's more likely that 30 years ago, in his mind, he was so smart that he created this story in this pathway of going to MIT, going to Caltech, going to Los Alamos, working at S4, which at that time was not declassified, talking about the biometric systems, talking about the element. Is it more likely that this guy is so smart and he sees the future so much that he was able to craft that story out, and then 30 years later, all of these things come to light and they're true?
Well, he probably did it because there's a whole community like the ufology people that sell books and go on TV shows, go radio, podcasts,
In
go to these
1988?
conventions. Yeah, even in 1988. Yeah.
No.
There's UFO culture. It's a whole thing. People buy those
It
books.
is now.
And yeah, think about even back then, like what's the Betty and Barney Hill story? That was a huge story back then. Then what's the Fire in the Sky? That was a huge one back then too.
Right.
And then
but
he's
those
coming,
were
and then
popular.
Roswell was even big then too. Still,
But S4 wasn't
but it's still
declassified.
he
at that
could have said
point.
it was anything.
Area
though.
51 wasn't
They knew that there was something
declassified
there.
at that point in time.
But
And then after he comes out, then there's this huge explosion with hotels and everything around Area
Yeah.
51. So before that, Area 51 was not a thing. Now, granted, Roswell and stuff
but
like
you
that.
know
was-
that there was something there. Fences, you said know what it was.
It could have been anything.
Yeah, and he could have just called it whatever.
But I mean, there was already nuclear testing going on there in that area.
there's
so-
like some gates down by the river. I could say like I worked at a place called J15, and then
yeah,
like
but what's the
10 years from
likelihood
now,
of predicting all that stuff right?
well, because he didn't predict anything right.
What do you mean?
He didn't predict. He just said he worked there. He didn't predict it.
He said he talked about the biometric thing.
Yeah.
Nobody believed him. That came out as being true. He talked about element 115. Nobody believed him. That came out as being true.
But that could I
talked
could have
about
said that.
S- But what's like you know how many elements? That's
But I could have
predicting-
said, hey, yeah, there's this element there snuck out.
That's
during
like
the-
predicting boron.
Yeah, but
yeah,
I mean,
I 30 years
I could say
before.
that, but there's
it-
no proof. There's
it
no
wasn't
proof. There's no
till
proof from the government that it happened. There's no
2004.
proof from anybody that any of it's true.
There's no proof that the CIA killed JFK either, but I believe it's true. So, but I mean, like I said, like S4, all that stuff. Like, he would be the greatest con man of all time. The greatest con man of all time.
I'd say I'm sure the guy's made a good living off of being who he is.
But he donates everything.
He donate. That's what he says. Do you have his tax stuff to say?
No,
He's a
I
liar.
don't have Trump's either.
He's a-
So obviously,
Just saying, he's a-
obviously nothing that
He did
I-
have one big ass refrigerator.
yeah,
So-
he had a nice house, and I was like, "How's he make?"
But you gotta
how's he-
think though, in that job, you gotta get paid well.
Yeah, if you own your own laboratory, you
Yeah.
can make a little bit
Well,
of cash.
apparently not now. It got raided, shut down by the
No, it's
government.
got rated. It's back up.
Oh, it's back
Yeah.
up.
He was
He's not gonna get
washing
indicted for
those
it.
little balls of.
But let's say he said this is my biggest part about the element thing is like the government would have proof then that he stole it and would prosecute him for that.
What if they can't find it?
What if they can't?
First of all, they'd have to admit that it exists. Second of all, they would have to find it.
they would just have
But they're not gonna
say it
do
exists. Yeah. But
Why would they say that it exists though? If they said it existed and they were able to sustain it, then that would mean that they would have to produce it for scientific methods.
That's what I'm saying. They would
outer worldly, and they would not admit that. Why would they admit that? Then they would have to admit the whole program existed.
It's not that.
It's like a snowball.
No, I don't.
You like throw this little snowflake in, the next thing you know, it's wrapped up into a snowball.
And that basically says everything he said was true.
Yeah.
Which they're not going to admit that either.
Well, they can make him look even dumber by doing that too, and that.
I just, if it wasn't for the element, I would kind of be on the same page as you. But you're talking about an element that did not come to pass until 2004, and there's no way that he could predict those numbers right. I mean, if it does not exist in our elemental chart,
but he says that he got them right. There's no, like in the old story, he's not talking exactly like with the news people when he comes out in 1989. He's not breaking down exactly what the element is though, and it doesn't. What it actually is.
He mentioned he says they call it element 115, and this was in 1988.
Yeah.
And it was not on our elemental chart until 2004, and even now it's in a stage that degrades itself. So I mean, if it wasn't for that, I'd be like, you're crazy. But then once again, you throw it came from this star system. That's kind of hokey. But at least he didn't say.
But like he said though about the star system that it was. They probably put it in there to throw him off. Like it was probably didn't really come from there, but they put fake things in there to make.
Once again, he's creating that story and being that specific, and then he would have to be the greatest con man of all time.
It just doesn't make sense, like how he has these degrees and got in, but then no one knows. That's like my biggest thing. It's like no one from his school knows who the guy is. He was a good enough scientist to get into a secret government program.
Well, let's use Los Alamos. So. Everybody says okay, he doesn't exist, and then they produce a phone list from this time period.
But that could also be fake too.
Maybe.
But I think it's real. I think he was there. Like I said, he could have been janitor.
They said that after Los Alamos went to a different location, like he took them through it, and like they have it on film of him saying, going through, and this is where I worked. I mean, those laboratories are astronomical, and you're talking about. I can't remember. They said at one point in time how many thousands of feet this area was, but I mean the likelihood of him walking specifically in there and not getting lost and ending up in a bathroom closet. No, this is where we worked.
Yeah.
So obviously, I'm not going to be able to convince this guy.
Like I said, I think he went to Los Alamos, but I don't know if he really worked on this. Like how do you get recruited out of college? You would have to be a pretty good student to get recruited to work for a secret government program.
Well, according to him, he didn't even get recruited because of that. He got recruited because he was featured in this thing of creating his own jet car.
Yeah, like it showed but still.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, but
you're bringing in somebody that created their own jet car to do something.
So maybe he lied about about his degrees a long time ago, and then he just kept with the lie. And maybe everything else is true. I don't know.
I mean, to me, the degrees and stuff don't really even matter, to be honest with you, because there's been a lot of smart people that haven't had degrees.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that shows that he's lying. I'm not saying that he shouldn't be able to do it because he don't have the degrees. I'm saying that he's lying because he said he has these 2 degrees, which there's no proof that he has.
He says,
he has no classmates.
Like George Knapp said, why would Los Alamos hire him if he didn't have degrees?
Because he was a janitor or something there. He might have been a contractor for someone else.
People that make jet cars get hired for.
But what if all these people, the ones in class with him and shit, seen everything he's been through?
Yeah, no one's seen him in class.
But what if they don't want to come out and say, well, I don't want to be, I don't want the press and everybody my shit, so I'm not going to come out and say anything.
We don't know that nobody spoke out. I mean. And not only that, but if you're in that position and you're under constant scrutiny, would you really be like, oh, call this person, call that person? And
yeah, that's the first thing I did. Was like, oh yeah.
But you know as well as
especially if the government screwed.
The government probably called all these people. And they go, oh, yeah, we know him. Well, we're not going to say that.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave that out of the story.
I'm just telling you, if somebody calls me tomorrow with CNN and they say, hey, do you know David Morguson? He's been working on this top secret thing. And then, I turn on the news and, being blackballed. I'm like, nope.
All you got to say is, yeah, I know the guy. You don't say, yeah.
They do have sources that say that all day long. But they don't have.
Not that they went to class with them.
Yeah.
No, he said, he had the guys there were 2 people that took him.
Though.
That dropped him off at the library at both places.
But that was just Caltech. That wasn't That wasn't.
I thought it was at both
MIT.
places,
No.
and then they're saying that
No.
there's only like the two people that gave him a ride.
Apparently,
to there.
Caltech's a pretty small place, and two separate people testified that they dropped them off for class and
At a
they picked them up
library.
from the library. But so you're gonna tell me back then in the early '80s, this dude was so smart. He's like, I'm gonna make $1 billion off, and so. Like,
No, I'm saying that
5+
they're
years-
lying. That's all. I'm not saying
Well,
that
well,
he did. I'm saying they're lying.
So like,
I'm saying this is proof that there's lies.
he crafted it so deeply that he had
Maybe, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. He's lying about, part of it probably has to be true.
So what's your take on all of it? Do you
I think the
think
government's got in his head. That's what I
do you think that all those dominoes could fall though if he wasn't being truthful? Like you take each one of them out and you can kind of pick and choose, but there's just so many things that he said that have now proven to be correct. It would be hard for me to believe that 30+ years ago that he was that smart and able to create all this stuff.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think he's lying about stuff, and you got to think it has been 30 years. So yeah, maybe some stuff it's hard for him to come up with an exact story.
Well,
But as many times he's been asked about it,
not only
it's
that,
something you think would slip somewhere here and there.
Yeah.
not only that, but a lot of the testimony about people taking him to class and stuff like that came through George Knapp and him vetting, him trying to prove that he was a liar. So I mean, to me, in 1988, you're talking about 30+ years ago, and then you have to lie an additional 5 years before that. Like, it would be hard for me to believe back in 1998 or 1988 that they knew it was going to blow up to this level, to where George Knapp would find people that he's already getting involved in a scheme about lying and taking them to college. Like, that doesn't even really make sense.
I didn't know who George Knapp was till all this happened, and I went back and
It said he
he's
hosts,
pretty
he
big
hosts like a
credibility.
radio show, and then there's like people talking about their cats' ghosts and stuff. He's not like an actual at the time I guess he worked at a news station, but I mean I don't think he's a big time credible journalist.
Well, when they did interviews with him in his office, if you notice, there's like awards all around the top and across the back of it. So obviously he's pretty accredited for multiple things, and essentially to me, he's kind of been vindicated because he was doing all these stuff on Area 51 back in the day, and now they've Obama said Area 51. He's the first president to admit that it was there. They admitted that S4 was a program. They've now admitted about the stealth bomber program. So, I mean, once again, this is a long time before any of this stuff come out, a long time before social media, a long time before YouTube videos, that it's just shown that all of this stuff that they said was true a long time ago. So, once again, I'm going to ask you, how could it be possible that he could predict all this stuff back then in the 80s? I mean, to me, I can't fathom it. He would have to be the greatest comic.
Yeah, like you said, he couldn't.
I just don't see how it could be possible. I don't see how anybody could fabricate that and kind of weave it through enough to say, hey, this is...
Yeah, like what he said, everybody thinks he's lying. He goes, I could come up with a better lie than this,
Right. Yeah, and...
But that's what a liar would want you to think. That's what a liar would say. I'd come up with a different lie.
I don't know. I just think that...
I want to know where, as long as you think about aliens, we've always, like, this shirt right here. Everybody, where we get that picture from? Like,
Roswell, yeah, the dummies, whatever. They're not dumb. They're
at the beginning of Unacknowledged, which is a good segue from Bob Lazar. So there's another documentary called Unacknowledged. Stephen Greer, is that correct, David?
I think that's
He's a doctor. It's his program, and essentially it's a documentary where he puts together multiple, doctors, military people that have been worked on bases and flight, people that were involved in flights that saw UFOs, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. And, going back to that original situation in Roswell, that's where that picture came. The medical examiner who we talked about, where they said he took him to Ohio, they went to a base and then went to Ohio, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's where the whole picture and everything came. And it's kind of funny that the narrative is stuck with it, because even like you talk about Bob Lazar talking about seeing the craft and going through it and estimating that the people that inside of it were only 3 or 4 foot tall. You still have all the way dating back to Roswell, which, you can say, okay, Bob Lazar said that because of Roswell. But, the people at Roswell, obviously they are the ones that come up with all of this. You said you got through a little bit of it. Did you watch it?
Yeah, I watched most of it.
So does I know you've poked hole in the Bob Lazar story. I mean, does it change your opinion when you have so many military personnel, so many, medical examiners, so many flight,
Yeah, that's the one thing that does. That is like there's certain authorities that you call them authorities because they know what they're talking about, and there's actual proof that they, did what they did. That's the one thing I like when we were talking about when I first started talking. That's really the reason why I think that this subject's so fascinating, is because there's people like that that aren't cashing in on it, and they're coming on, and they all see like sort of the same thing. You know what I'm saying? They're all saying the same things, but it's like that's kind of the point. Like, is there evidence that UFOs are interdimensional, or they're from another space, or are they just like government aircrafts? That's like the interesting thing about the whole subject. So yeah, I give those people a lot of credibility. But like I was talking about listening coast to coast, there's also like ones that you don't like. Trying to remember, you guys probably know that guy's name. He was like a astronaut.
Oh yeah.
Is it Mitchell? Is that the guy? Was that the crazy one?
He was involved in it a little bit. He's like
there was one guy that's
man
like
to walk on the moon or something.
There's one guy that was an actual astronaut though, but he's like this freaking.
You talking about the guy that said that there was a base on the dark side of the moon?
Yeah, I think so. I don't.
He was involved in NASA. He wasn't an astronaut. But
well, no, there was an actual astronaut that's actually been in space. I'm thinking of. I have to look up the guy's name, but he's freaking.
There's a lot of.
There's people like other nutcases that just probably make their money going to like conventions. And
did you see though that NASA tracked? I think it was NASA tracked an unknown object in one of the craters on the moon that was like several thousand feet wide. So you got the crazy guy saying, "Oh, there's a base on the dark side of the moon. And the moon rotates, and they see this giant structure inside of a crater."
But who said that though?
NASA. It was
but the Chinese actually were like the first people to like
mention it,
to photograph the back of the moon. Like it was like a few months ago. It wasn't too long ago.
Yeah.
And
I guess they're starting to analyze these pictures. And in one of the craters, there's an unknown object. I showed the picture to you where they talked about the unknown object that was on national news about. I can't remember how many feet they said it was wide, but they don't know what it is.
Yeah, it could have been something that crashed in there.
It could have been anything.
Rock or something.
So,
could have been an alien, David.
Yeah, it could be.
When you watched Unacknowledged, did that help or hurt the Bob Lazar case and your opinion of like what?
I've got to watch it again. I went home and watched it Friday, and like I said, went to sleep.
Yeah, you definitely watched that. So.
It was late. I was definitely into it.
It's pretty good because some of them are kind of like poorly made, and then you get like recycled History Channel, Ancient Alien stuff in it.
But this one actually
was
had
pretty
real
good.
footage of different things. So.
Yeah, a lot of, and there's another one called Out of the Blue on Amazon, and it's, to me, they're kind of 1A and 1B as far as Unacknowledged and Out of the Blue, because a lot of the footage in Out of the Blue, which was 2012, was used in the 2017 Unacknowledged documentary. So, yeah, I definitely think it lends a lot more credibility to everything to have so many people come forward and give specific examples, and not only give specific examples, but also present documentation within the government that's been declassified at this point in time to show military outlets reporting things, people within the flight community. One of the guys was on an international flight that reported it, and there was documentation he was able to produce. There was another guy that was over one of the nuclear test sites, and he had an instance that he was able to document and produce the documentation. And all of this happened back in like 2012 whenever they went before on Capitol Hill and presented all this. So
yeah,
a lot of documentation to go behind what they're saying, not just,
Yeah, which those like committees and stuff that the White House, they were headed by like one of the most powerful people in the government at the time, Harry Reid, and stuff like that. They were investigating these and,
It never seems to go anywhere, though.
Because you got these crazy people that hijack it, too, though. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's some credible stories, but then there's these just crazies out there, and then...
Hey, dude, in Independence Day, the biggest crazy ended up being the man that said it all.
You got Tom DeLonge quitting Blink-182 and going broke
No, I listened to a little
Fun
bit
in the
of that.
goatee guy.
Was it Annie Jacobson?
Yeah.
And she brought up that the guy said that they pretty much took, I guess, kids with Down syndrome and disabilities and made them to make them look like these aliens.
Yeah, that was her guy inside Area 51. And she also talked about like all of the, like her source, and apparently he's passed away now, so there's a possibility that she could reveal her source and also release some type of book on the things that he talked about. But he apparently revealed to her a lot of the technology that we're just now getting, such as drones, etc. Back several years before they were so widespread. But you have to take each one of these government sources with a grain of salt. To me, it's far more beneficial to see the documentation and the testimony of people that are kind of out of the military now that have the ability and want you to hear their story, because I'm kind of concerned with an inside source that's giving them all this information, because they're giving them truth, like drones, the drone technologies, they're giving them that truth, and then he can kind of steer the subject and the stories however he wants to do it. So if there was actually something within inside Area 51, he can make up whatever he wanted, because he's got her kind of eating out of his hand at that point in time and say, we were using. Okay. That's terrible. Why would you admit that you're using?
I was kind of red flag about her right off the get go, and he's like, "Well, he gave me permission to release his stuff after he's dead." Like, well, why wouldn't you want to do it while you're alive? Well, that was a red flag for me. Like,
I'm sure that he probably didn't want his life ruined. Like,
but I mean, if he's gonna die, I mean,
if you're that old already,
alive,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, what's he gonna have ruined on you now?
Does it give you, either one of you, concern that so many of these sightings are kind of over military installations?
No, that's what I think. That's a good possibility. When I hear that, that's a good possibility. It could be like experimental craft or something like that. But I mean, the biggest argument I think for aliens is like you've seen it like right after Roswell, just the explosion of technology, and I don't know if it's all just from government spending, where we had all the like the greatest minds in the world at our country, like going against Russia. So we were just pouring money into technology. I don't know if it all came from that, or if it's reverse engineered by someone like Bob Lazar and on government bases to get this technology. But we made like the biggest jump in human history when you think about it in the last was 70 years or something. I mean, think of all 70 years ago versus today of the technology. It's never been a big jump, even from computers.
In human history.
Yeah.
What about you? Does it give you concern or worry that they're over all the military installations?
It makes me think, hey, maybe we have something behind it. Like he said, maybe they are just test ships, but originally, did we come up with these ideas, or they found one? I don't know what to think, really.
Yeah, somebody, I think it was Dr. Greer had said that his belief is that whatever entity is out there is concerned with the violent human nature, which obviously we're a very violent species, a constant warring species, and he thought that they were kind of observing and making sure we didn't really destroy ourselves. But on the other hand of that, if these accounts are true, and even one account talking about, that's one of the
missiles shutting down.
Yeah, the missiles shutting down. I mean, that's to me terrifying.
And you've heard several stories like that from credible people.
Yeah, and there's documentation, and he presented that documentation because,
in Russia too, and other countries. Yeah. I think it's happened.
So
European countries.
You're presenting this documentation to show that this was your observation that these missiles shut down. But what the government's doing is they're saying, okay, this is not a threat to national security. So at that point in time, it doesn't go under Freedom of Information Act. So it's just constantly swept underneath the rug. And you've got so many presidents that have said that they've asked for permission to see this and that, and they've all kind of been swept under the rug. So I think that it could be the case that they're concerned with us, that we might destroy each other ourselves, but at the same time, it could also be the case that they're doing some deep level recon.
Isn't it crazy that the president who's supposed to run our country can't get information on shit that he wants.
That's what Bill Clinton said, but I don't know. Like, didn't Bush say it too? That he's asked for. But I know Clinton said he asked for.
It was a big deal for Clinton,
and they wouldn't give. They wouldn't brief him on it or something.
I can't remember what his title was in the Clinton administration, but when Clinton got elected, he came to this particular guy and says, "I want to know everything that they know."
It was like his first week there, or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was like,
and he produced the documentation with the request of the CIA, etc., about that stuff, and they were essentially told, we don't know anything.
But Trump was briefed like 2 weeks ago on the Navy UFO sightings. But I mean, they may have just said it was a drone.
From 2015.
Well, no, there's been several since then.
Okay, you're talking about the one that supposedly came out of the ocean.
Yeah, there's been they said that they're the numbers of them are increasing, but I guess it's official numbers.
Do you think that it's a coincidence that since he was in office that he started talking about Space Force? Do you think that I'm being dead serious.
They told him, they told him, they're like, Mr. President, there's life forms. He's like, we got to build a Space Force.
I mean,
and everybody's like, what is this guy talking about?
Yeah, and now several months
like, we got to listen. We got to go to Mars.
Gross, or do you think that somebody said, "Hey, man"?
He backed up off the Space Force thing, though, didn't he?
Yeah, it's probably pretty classified. What do you think? Do you think it's coincidence, or do you think that he came out and said something like that because he knows something we don't know?
Well, I think if he definitely knows something, his big mouth's going to come out and say it.
Well, I mean,
he's like, these people, they love me. He's like, the Zetas, they love me.
He might not supposed to have been saying Space Force. You know what I'm saying?
I know. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But
and that could be why he backed off of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
He's the president, though. No, I'm going to take him down.
It's all terrifying. Yeah, that's what JFK said. So I think it's all pretty scary when you think about it.
You'll know next election if he's not back in office. Well, you gotta get this guy out here.
President now is way more powerful than they were in 1961.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
but
there's so much.
But that being said, though, there's more secret shadow government pieces too, though.
And I guess the technology that we have now is so old as far as how long it's like. She was talking about drones in that podcast and talking about them having them 40 years ago. And now we just now have them. And they've become prominent over the last 4 or 5 years. But, so imagine...
Well, Obama was killing people with them like 10 years ago.
Was it that long?
Yeah, he's like blowing up like wedding parties.
Yeah, I knew that. But I thought it was, I guess, closer in time than that. I thought it just kind of came towards the end of his run as president. But...
you think they had these ships and said the government had it and had enough knowledge that apparently they can fly these things.
Yeah.
Why were we not using them with
to
fight people now?
Yeah, that's the biggest argument too, because you could just who's going to stop you? Well, if you have these UFOs to blow people up.
But if they only have 9 of them and they can't recreate them,
9 of them's enough, I would say. Wouldn't you?
But he said that not all.
You don't
of them
think we don't have engineers that could build those things?
I guess that's what Bob Lazar was talking about.
No, I think that unfortunately, and you see it in the scientific world, I think especially in the United States, that science hasn't progressed at the level that it should, because I think that so many people kind of come in with a closed-mindedness and they're not able to kind of open that box up and think outside of it. And I think that's why they bring people like Bob Lazar in. This is a new set of eyes. He's not trained conventionally. He hasn't had these jobs that all these people that have been here for years and years and stuff like that. And so the next thing you know, we're creating the same old product over and over again. And I think if we had, let's say out of the 9, half of them, so 4.5, 5 were operational, why would you risk putting that out to the world and getting that thing shot down or destroyed whenever this could be the thing that changes and makes you the dominant superpower for now until...
So you think they're scared to fly over Afghanistan and get it shot down? And
not Afghanistan. They don't have an air force, but
something like.
But maybe
the
we
Germans got their
haven't
hands
been
on
doing this, so that's why no country's been we've not been attacked by any countries really. So.
But I mean, like somebody like Russia or China or somebody like that, they can intentionally shoot it down and start their reverse engineering process. I want to step before. I've got one more thing to kind of bring up to kind of bring this as a circle, but I want to step back for a minute and you talking about the technology explosion. I don't think that there's any coincidence with that technology explosion happening right after World War II, whenever we kind of split the German scientists with Russia. I don't think there's any coincidence in it at all. Everybody knows about Operation Paperclip. Everybody knows about how it made us a nuclear power. Everybody knows about how it essentially not only did make us nuclear power, but we also went to the moon after that, supposedly. So I don't think that there's any coincidence with the Germans, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of the technology that we got, and if these crafts did exist, that they weren't in possession of them. Because you think about it, they took over the majority of Europe. So if any of these countries had their own little individual scientists or whatever, they just kind of pick those people up too and bring them a part of it. So that's kind of my opinion on the explosion, and then if you add alien craft in it as well, then you kind of got.
I've kind of studied it a lot, and I kind of thought, it's the Cold War it freaked everybody out when the Russians launched the first satellite like Sputnik. I mean, they can start launching everything into space and just destroy us. I kind of wonder, and then we outspin them till they, were dissolved, till they weren't a country anymore.
They had the leg up on us because they were creating satellites and we were creating atom bombs. So
yeah, well, I mean, they created hydrogen bombs too and all that.
Well, but it was after us.
Yeah, but not too long after. Yeah. Maybe was it like 6 months or a year or something like that? It wasn't too long.
But at that point in time, they're still our allies.
Yeah.
Whenever we dropped the atom bombs, they were allies. And dropped the first atom bomb, Japan didn't surrender. Dropped the second atom bomb, and then Russia also said that they were about to declare war and start attacking through China towards Japan. And at that point in time, they kind of said, "Okay, we quit."
Yeah.
So, but I do not believe that we alone could come up with this stuff. As far as the propulsion systems and stuff like that, I feel like that they're kind of boxed in as far as to what they think and what they can create.
Think about it, we still have like combustible motors and stuff, and there's electric motors available that it's still, I guess we're just so far behind on. So we don't really see it that way, but
you kind of dove into Roswell a little bit in the first of that documentary. Is it something that you looked into before, Roswell?
No, not really.
But you know enough of the outline. Don't you think it's unique that Roswell happened, and then, like David said, we had this huge explosion of, even just like fiber optics and
microwaves. Yeah,
and stuff like that. I mean, don't you think that's ironic, or do you think that humans were just already to that level, to that point? I mean, we were like happy with electricity and motorized cars. So
yeah, we probably needed a little help, I'd say.
I mean, it's all just speculation at this point, but like with all the things that they said was in that, and that the craft with the way it was wired and everything else, I just found that interesting that all of a sudden we had this giant explosion, and like David said, we have microwaves, and it just never ends. It's just something. It seems like something every month now.
Computers get smaller every month. Like the processors get so much smaller every month. That's the biggest technology, now is processors, how fast they are, and the memory and stuff. It's just insane that like our phones have like are smarter than the computers we had like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
I always said electronics would be the end of the world.
Yeah, I've watched Terminator too many times too. So I mean, it obviously. What was that one? You're talking about Joe Rogan at the beginning. He had the one with
Boston Dynamics. He's talking about the robots.
Was he talking with was it Elon Musk he was talking with about the robots, or is it someone else?
I think he's talked to everybody about
it. Okay.
Have you seen any of that stuff?
That may be when I was talking about.
They've got these robots that essentially can do anything. Like, it's crazy.
Kind of like iRobot?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but they don't look exactly like that, but like a lot of them have like tracks or wheels for legs instead of actually having legs, and they can just go over everything and then jump up in the air.
Because like the new Child's Play movie that came out last week too. I watched.
Well, dude, I work at a plant, and I see robots do shit that I'm like, how the hell they know exactly where to go and something every time? I'm like, who's programming this shit?
They're gonna start learning and be like, Jeremy.
And where did that technology come from?
Yeah, and like one of these actually be like, well, I don't want to fucking do this no more.
I'm free now.
Toyota's going down.
They're picking Jeremy up by its head.
Yeah, we will kill our slave masters.
I just saw in the next 10 years they're predicting that robotics is going to take 20 million jobs. So I mean,
what I see, I believe it. I mean, you're basically be able to build like a car with very minimal people. Hopefully, I'm retired by then.
So as far as outside of like the government sightings, the government sites where all this stuff happens, two of the biggest things in my opinion and what I've seen, the first one being Phoenix in '98. I'm sure that you've seen that video. Have you seen that video?
The big.
There was a giant
for like a week straight, wasn't it?
No. This was one specific night. So this giant craft, 3 different lights on it, comes across Phoenix. People were reporting that it was going on everywhere, and it was there for like a long period of time where enough people got film of it, stuff like that. And several people said that it was like thousands of feet long. It stayed up in the sky for a very long time. Had, like I said, 3 specific lights on it. And so you have so many people that saw this, and they present it to the government, and the government's like, "Oh, these were just flares," and you give a really,
Was it the governor there that got really mad about it, or the mayor or something? That
he played it down really bad, and then afterwards he said that he was never happy with the explanations that he got, because it kind of essentially made him look bad that he wasn't able to come.
It's been a long time, but I watched a documentary where you probably saw the same thing, where they talking to the police officers and stuff that were patrolling that night around there.
Yeah.
And I was watching that.
There's so many people that saw it.
Yeah,
and
everybody.
And I guess the craziest part to me is that you didn't have just 1 or 2 people saying, "Oh, this was giant." You had a bunch of people saying it went directly over my head. It was a giant craft. And it could have been a government craft. I mean, it could have been, and they could have been driving it over a giant city to see what happened, just to see how far the fire spread. But
just watch these people lose their minds.
That's probably part of it too. They wanted to see what people would do.
But now you have the video that I just showed you guys from 2015 with the Navy pilots absolutely freaking out and seeing this craft, the way it moved, and it's on video now. And the part that was the craziest to me is that it was being tracked by a drone, and when the drone tried to zoom in on it, it was already gone, and they're having to like take the drone way up, and then they were tracking on again, and it was already gone again, and then they finally kind of locked in on it enough to follow it. But they're saying that was traveling at speeds from anywhere from 4,000 to 10,000 miles per hour. So not only are you having sightings now in government facilities and military bases and stuff like that, like this has stepped out, because that particular incident was seen by people like apparently everywhere, even up to O'Hare Airport. So, I mean, I guess what are your thoughts on that? If this is some type of government-run program, why would they be flying in civilian areas to be seen by your own military and fighter jets, to be tracked by towers at airports, and to be filmed and seen by thousands of people overhead Phoenix? I'll let you have the question.
Well, I think
first.
you kind of hitting that. They just kind of want people's reactions. They just want to see what will people believe, how they're going to react, and I think they can kind of move on from there.
What would be the benefit of it?
What's the benefit of anything the government does? That's what we're being
money,
honest.
usually.
Yeah.
It's usually money. But, like...
Well, you got to think, if these people uploading this shit on YouTube, and somebody's going to get money revenue somewhere with all these hits and stuff.
Yeah. I just don't know that they would want other governments to see their capabilities, because everything's so hush-hush with all of these government programs with new weapons and everything. I mean, you look back at the Bin Laden raid, all those years ago, they had a brand new Apache helicopter. Nobody else had to use it. It was the first time. It was a different propulsion system, and they used it. It crashed. They made sure they destroyed it so nobody else could get it and reverse engineer it. So all this stuff is very hush-hush. I don't know why they would want to have it on film or anything.
What do you think other countries think about this stuff? I'd like to see interviews from what other countries think. Do they think they're aliens? Do they think it's the government?
And out of the blue, they talk about that. They have different government agencies come up with different reports that are very similar to the ones that are happening in America. So it's not just happening in America. It's not just isolated to America. These things are happening all over the world. The most prominent one happened in France. And, he's absolutely believing. They had a craft that came into a military facility. 4 different people saw it. They tried to observe it. They filmed it. They took impressions of where the craft landed, and then the craft essentially took back off. And whenever they went behind with radiation guns, they found radiation on different trees. And this is all documented. And I guess it was the number 2 man in charge did not have enough faith that the number 1 man would get this out, that he actually circumvented the process to release this to the public about this occurrence, to make sure that it got out there, which, it still kind of gets buried. And, France did a full investigation on it, and they thought that it was outer worldly, and they released it. But the problem is that they released it in French, so there's never been any type of translation to, to English. But I don't think that anything that our government would do would ever can be concerned with. I guess what the public thought. They've never been concerned with what the public's thought before, and I don't think that they would reveal anything to any other governments. I think that they're going to keep everything as hush hush as possible. If anything happens and it goes awry, if it is theirs, then they would destroy it. So, what about you? What do you think? Why would there be sightings outside of military bases if it was?
Social experimentation, like Jeremy said, that's definitely because I mean they've done that since for the last 100 years, experimented on social things against like the public. Sometimes the public didn't know exactly what they were being experimented on. Like you think about things like the Tuskegee Airmen, stuff like that. I mean, used
that wasn't necessarily top secret. That was just more social experiments.
Yeah.
To me, it's one of two things. Either you see this stuff happen above government ground because the government's behind it, or two, aliens are keeping.
Yeah.
They want to know what we're doing to keep an eye on us. And I don't know which one I really believe, but
yeah,
that's that part of the problem. That's why I think this whole thing's so fascinating because there's no answers.
Do you realize? Okay, let's say this is a government program. Do you realize how many people will be in the dark of it because of the documentation that we've just talked about with so many people that are higher up over military bases? You're talking about being in command of an entire military base. Do you really think they would be in the dark about this?
Yeah, because I mean the president probably wouldn't even know about it, like we were talking about earlier. Like it would probably be singled out to like a handful, maybe like 2 or 3 people, I would say.
So let's use the nuclear base, and the gentleman presented the documentation showing that he believes that the missiles were turned off, etc. Don't you think that being in his position, having a nuclear top security clearance, that somebody would come in and say, "Hey, man, this is our deal. You don't need to talk about this to anybody."
They probably don't think he'd be like Bob Lazar and be like going on TV or something. That's probably another reason that they wouldn't tell anybody.
I just think that under those circumstances that a lot, I mean, he obviously knows nuclear secrets. Well, if they're worried about that, what would be the difference between them releasing nuclear secrets versus UFO secrets?
That's one thing I don't understand. Is like, if they were aliens, like why would we know about it? Like why wouldn't they just say there's aliens?
Well,
I mean, I don't know why it would freak people out. Yeah, I mean, it obviously didn't in Phoenix at the time. People weren't rioting. And I mean, the New York Times story came out 2 years ago about pretty much that UFOs exist. Like in a, big media setting saying, hey, UFOs exist. First time ever. And nobody freaked out about it. Wasn't even on the front page of it. Like,
would it change your life or your mind about things if they came out tomorrow and said there was absolute definitive proof of aliens?
I want to come out and put a damn alien on the television. Like I want to see it talking, communicating. Like I want to,
an alien on TV would.
If they're out there, I want to know.
But would it freak? Let's say that there was crafts out there that they're aware of. They're not able to talk to them. They're not able to control them. There's essentially nothing we can do militarily about them. Would it freak you out enough to change your mind about how you went about your everyday life?
No, because I mean that could happen now. Why would I change what I'm doing?
So
I can't control it now. If I knew about it, I wouldn't be able to control it either.
To you, let's say it would be no different from a natural disaster like an asteroid or
yeah,
a hurricane.
I'm gonna come on Friday night and drink my beer and
you can't control the things you don't.
But I don't think that everybody would react that way. I really
like you
don't.
said, nobody can control an asteroid or
there's probably like most people wouldn't even care
or...
too. There'd be like kids that would still be on their phone, like Snapchat and
But
shit.
is the government ever going to admit their weakness? You know what I'm saying? Like, why would they ever come out and say,
sure, because there's no accountability anywhere.
There's nothing we can do about this. Yeah. I don't think that a government would ever do that because they don't want to lose their at least perceived control over the population. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, that would be them admitting that there's something far superior than them. And, I think
but I don't think there'd be like a multinational conspiracy like other countries kept it under too. But like, it makes me think of that Chappelle Show episode. What is the Deep Impact one? And he's like aliens exist, and he's and or is that Blackbush? I can't remember which one it was.
I don't know.
That's pretty funny. But
going to Mars.
Yeah, Red Rocks.
What about the video that I just showed you from 2015? Do you think it's legit, Gross?
Yeah. I mean, the video nowadays, it's, technology is so much better now than then.
and the fact that it was rounded, it had no wings, there was no exhaust from showing.
Like
propulsion.
you said, the thing that how fast it was going. Like I don't know that we can generate something that moves that fast. I mean, think about we still use airplanes.
I don't know that we can generate something that fast without some type of, because I don't know how many of the military videos that you've ever kind of watched, and I'm probably a nerd when it comes to this, but like a jet goes by in the military, like what we watched earlier with the black and white and tracking it, you're going to see some type of disruption behind it from the exhaust. Or some type of heat signature if it's infrared or whatever, and there wasn't any of that with that craft. And obviously it's flying much faster than a bird.
That's what Bob said, that one time he actually got to see one lift off. It was like quiet. It made no noise, So
what about you?
You shoot a rocket off, you're going to hear that
those videos are...
You think they're legit?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. So one of the things that I took away from it, so Bob talks about the craft flying like this at slow speeds, but then whenever they start taking off at higher speeds, they flip up like this. Did you notice in that second video in 2015 that the craft flipped like this and then it went back to this?
Yeah, I noticed that, yeah.
So once again, don't you think that videos like that give some type of credibility?
No, because people have been saying stuff like that forever. Like I said, this is like a big
I've never heard that.
Big UFOlogy.
I always thought they just flew,
Even back
in
in like '88 when all this stuff came out.
Like I said, UFOlogy is something that's been around forever, and it's all got like some of the same common themes.
What about the propulsion systems? Not showing a heat signature or anything like that, and him talking about that forever ago. Because even if UFOs were big in 1988, there was nobody that was smart enough to talk about the propulsion systems of it because it was.
Well, that would be your main thing is how would it work?
Well, all the ones.
That's why they had him there.
But in the folklore, propulsion systems with the UFO were underneath, and so you could still see I'm sure that you could probably pull up pictures today.
I don't think so because they always talk about the stories about them. They float and they're still, and then they'll jump sometimes too, and they'll jump without you even noticing, and they can stop on a dime.
Yeah,
and things like that.
Well,
it's always been
to me when I saw that craft flip like this, I'm like, man, yeah. I just once again. I think that if there are crafts out there, I think that we've probably shot them down or they've crashed because that's just natural. Any organic living thing is going to make mistakes and it's going to happen. And I do think that there's people reverse engineering. And to me, kind of circling back to Bob, I think he's given me enough information that he's told us what he knows about the situation. I don't think it benefits him in any way to continue to talk about it. I don't think that there's that much money. I don't think there's as much money in UFO conspiracies to be made as what you think.
I'm completely opposite about that. There's books on it that people buy. You and I are talking about it right now.
But it's so saturated.
The History Channels, all UFO stuff.
I've never watched it.
And the History Channel stuff, it makes this less legitimate. Like there's the ancient alien stuff. It's just so out there. That's why like the New York Times story was. No one talked about it because people like automatically assume UFOs are crazy people because of stuff like that. And there's like a whole there's a whole industry of it.
Right?
Yeah, I'd say part of it has to be. But then you got the nut jobs that are trying to make money off of it, which most people would be trying to make money off of it.
Yeah.
Not that you're a nut job because you are.
I just think that the market's so saturated with it that you really have to set yourself apart, and you really have to. You would have to talk a big game to differentiate yourself.
I don't know. He probably in his mind thinks he's bigger than Edward Snowden, and there's going to be like movies about him and stuff like that. I'm sure he thought that.
I don't get that impression from him. I almost get a disdain in talking about it from him.
That's why, like, when you see interviews of people like they all have. I don't know, like. When you think about people who've been whistleblowers or leakers,
So essentially there's nothing that he could say or do that could come out that would make you ever believe.
If the government said, hey, this guy actually did work with us.
I'd be the opposite. I'd be like, all right, Bob Lazar is fake.
Yeah,
the government came out and said that.
Well, they would have to declassify stuff after a while. I'm sure stuff was destroyed, obviously.
I thought something was very interesting what he said, and I don't know if you caught this or not, but he said that he was under the opinion that this had been around for a very long time, and that every 8 or 10 years they brought people back in to see if the science in the real world had caught up with the science.
Yeah, basically they get like to a stall, and they said they shut down for like 10 years and bring, basically like you said earlier, new people in to...
Makes sense, right?
New eyes. Yeah, I think everybody does that.
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. Like
I've
I said,
seen it. Toyota, they don't keep the same engineers forever.
To me, he's either the greatest con man of all time with all the stuff that he said back then that has come to pass now, or he's just completely legitimate. I mean, there's no in between to me. Like there's no.
You don't think he lied about any of it? Like there's
what?
like you said, there's no in between. Like you said, you don't think you think he's like completely like telling the truth on everything?
Like, give me an example.
Like, no, I'm just saying because he said there's no in between. He would have to be legitimate or a con man. He can't be like he could be both.
I don't think he was there long enough, and I don't think his story is intricate enough to have a lot of lies to it. I think it's pretty straightforward as far as what he said he did.
I can't remember how long did he say he was there.
6 months.
6 months, okay. So that's not a very long time.
No,
I don't remember anything like from.
And
from 6 months like that long ago.
Governor probably was like, we can't have this dude around. He's
well, and it makes perfect sense to me that because he admits, which that's another thing. If all of this situation you find you know exactly where to go to get apprehended by the government to get blackballed out of this program, why would he admit like I was an idiot? This is what was going on. He talked about his wife cheating on him and everything. Once again, these are so intricate lies. Like, he would literally almost have to map this out 30 years ago to be able to bring it to light now, because he's just recreated this story so many times. It's not changed. Like Gross said, there would be a slip up or mess up here or there with the story that he had to make it change or whatever. Do I think he lied about any of it? As far as the science and stuff of what he saw and what he explained, no, I don't think he lied about any of it. I think there's more to the story.
Is there any proof of the guy that he thought supposedly had died before him? Like, can you look up him?
He said he didn't know about it, didn't he? Say that he wasn't sure if he died or not. He was under the impression he did.
And I don't think that there's enough motivation for people to be whistleblowers anymore. I mean, you look at the majority of whistleblowers in the history of whistleblowers, and they have got absolutely
no protection there.
Yeah, they just. So there's no benefit for anybody to come out. I mean, essentially what he said that he did was just to protect himself to not be killed. And he told the story to a select number of people. And like George said, there was a bunch of people that he had taken out there to show the test flights, and he even got it on film. Have you seen that film?
Yeah.
He even got it on film at that point, and they weren't a group of people that necessarily liked each other that hung out, blah, blah, blah. But they've all essentially told the same story.
Well, when they come after him, though, the way they have done other whistleblowers like Edward Snowden and like Julian Assange, people like that, they just like... Because, I mean, Edward Snowden released, said that, pretty much what everybody kind of thought, but it brought credibility about the NSA watching people and collecting data. And that was top secret for the government.
Well, number one, I think Snowden had documents to back up what he said. Number two, I think
But the government actually was going after. They're still actively going after him.
Right. Well, I mean, he produced all these documents. So you have stone cold evidence there. All of this stuff is just his testimony.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
And anything that they do in any situation, they're going to have to admit that this stuff is real to go after him.
Yeah.
If they just say, oh, he's a kook.
Well, I don't think they ever admitted it with Edward Snowden, did they? Like, they just like...
Well, I mean, when you have tons of
obviously
NSA
it is.
documentation,
Yeah.
you don't need to admit anything.
You got all the major news stories, yeah.
But I think in our lifetime, there will be some type of declassification about Area 51, and he may or may not be vindicated. But for me, like I said, if it wasn't for the element, I think that I might be a little bit on the fence about it. But the fact that he was able to talk about this element so many years ago, and that now it's come to pass and it's on our elemental chart, that's pretty staggering evidence to me. And I wouldn't be surprised if someday, if he didn't have some secret laboratory or some high-end friend that is harboring this element 115 or whatever, and he was able to harness it and figure out exactly how it worked. And I mean, imagine the power of that. You can win the Nobel Prize. You could have your family and your life set up for the rest of the foreseeable future if you're able to harness this and recreate it. And it's the ultimate, I told you so. Here's the element. I've recreated the propulsion system. Here you go. So,
you think there's any chance the government would ever go to him now?
No.
And they'd be like, hey, you apparently knew more about this shit than anybody else has.
I think he's.
What can you do with it?
I think he's blacklisted. I almost think that if he has the 115, it's not so much to move forward the human experience or anything else. I think it's the ultimate finger to the government. I think it's to say, F you, I did this, I figured this out, you kicked me out, you shouldn't have done it. Here it is, you've ruined my life. Because I mean, he said on multiple occurrences that if he had the chance, he wouldn't ever say anything again.
But he knew the consequences, though. He kind of talked about that too.
I mean,
he kept standing behind it was a crime that they were holding this from the
26
public.
or 28 or whatever, how old he was. I mean, he kind of made a snap decision to try to. I think he legitimately thought they were going to come after him and kill him.
At the end of the day, I don't think I would ever have the courage to be a whistleblower for anything.
Even the video in '89, he came out and he said, I think I saw aliens. Quick glimpse. Now he goes like, now he's older. He's like, I don't think I saw aliens.
Yeah, but another part of it was that was the one thing where they're supposedly messing with an alien that was like in a seat that was recreated from the craft, and he said he thought that whatever, they were just trying to recreate it. But another thing is that he talked about cadavers before. He talked about cadavers in the 80s, and he never talked about that in the new documentary or the Joe Rogan podcast.
But didn't he say he may be wrong about, like you said, they may be dummies or something, the cadavers?
That was that one occurrence that he...
Oh, the one he said he just kind of saw.
Yeah.
He said they called them the kids. That was their nickname for them, the kids.
Oh, that's pretty strange.
That's weird.
Well,
does that go back to the thing that the lady was saying about they had, Down syndrome kids that they were working on to make them look like aliens? Does that tie together?
I don't know. I think when you take that story, when you take her story and you take his story, if you're going to believe one or the other, I don't think they coincide. I think you have to kind of pick a side on that. I think either the one dude from Area 51 was essentially saying we have all this technology and we don't want people to know about it. You're talking about that if they've had this technology since 1980 or whatever, we would have to be using it in the current situation, because the only way that they're going to release this technology is to make money or is to use it militarily. They're not going to release it for anything that's going to improve human lives. So, in my opinion.
They can still make money on stuff to improve human lives.
For themselves.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. It's going to make money.
Not just for that.
For themselves. They're not going to be making. They're not, like he said. He said if they release this technology, it could change the face of the world. It could change the way we use energy, et cetera, et cetera. They're not going to do that. They're making too much money off fossil fuels and everything else. The guy that supposedly created the car that ran off water, he disappeared. Nobody ever found him.
Yeah, and the first electric car battery patent was bought off from like GM or something like that.
But I think it's interesting too, like Carl Sagan and all the scientists of the times, they like kind of get them on board and they kind of slap it all down like it's impossible. And I mean, I think it's like, what's the number? The likelihood of no life on any other planet is like 1 in 110 billion trillion or something like that. Some astronomical number for there not to be life out there elsewhere. But I guess you kind of run into the fact of if there is people coming here, how are they doing it, and are they from civilizations that are hundreds of thousands of years old by the time they get here? So, all right, Gross. So after everything that we've talked about, still on board with the Bob Lazar story? Still believe it? Did David change your mind?
No, I don't. He's not a janitor. He was there working on stuff that
I say he could be. I mean, I think he was there, but
I think he knows too much.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's fully telling the truth, but I think there's got to be some kind of credibility to it.
So, any of the other things that we talked about, or even the video that you saw, did that kind of show you, like when the craft turned like that? I made sure that I told you about it, because that's the part that blew my mind. Because I've watched a lot of UFO things, and I've never heard anybody say, actually, we believe that the propulsion system makes it turn and
I've never heard that either. That was new to me.
Because when you follow aerodynamics and you look at the way that the craft's built, it would move in this way would be the way it was most aerodynamic. But dynamic, when you flip it this way, it would be far more.
Yeah, I like how you talked about the inside of it. Like they've never seen nothing like it.
Didn't even really know how it worked. Talked about
how to even describe it.
The see-through glass or whatever that we have now, but back then that was something that we.
Was that something we got from them?
Could be.
Has it been 30
I'd
years?
say that's probably a lot easier to reverse technology or reverse engineer than a propulsion system. So, And I assume that your opinion hasn't changed. You think he's a liar?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he is a liar. I mean, it's that's 100% he's a liar, but that doesn't mean he wasn't there though. Like
Just
I said,
because of the degrees and stuff.
yeah, because I mean, he's obviously lied about that, and then
What happens if one day down the road he produces those or produces a yearbook?
then I mean, if he has the yearbook, then I mean, I guess he's right. But I mean, why wouldn't there be a yearbook out there or like some kind of documentation from?
Yeah, because like a diploma,
you would have to go to MIT for a long time to.
diploma would
yeah.
not suffice for somebody like you because those things are too easily recreated.
Well, even if it's kind of weird. He doesn't have a diploma though, or anything like that.
Well, he might though. I mean,
Why couldn't you make up a yearbook though?
I mean,
You don't know who's in his class. You could put faces and names, and you don't know if
that
that's
would
real.
be pretty hard to do.
yeah.
I mean, it's
I
kind
think it
of
could be done.
it's kind of like one of those things that everything can be argued about that, and the schooling stuff never really concerned me. Like it was just kind of a side.
Oh, that's like the biggest thing. Because to be a scientist, you have to be pretty much a doctor. It would have to have a lot of school. I mean, you're not just like, just throw you out there. I mean, scientists are scientists for a reason because
Einstein didn't have a degree.
do what?
Einstein didn't have a degree.
But he taught at a university though.
Well, I mean, yeah, but at this point, who's going to hire him?
And he got like
Steve Jobs. You go down the list.
But he's not Steve Jobs or Albert Einstein though.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that are instances in the past where education was.
Those are the exceptions. That's why we know who they are. Because I mean, Steve Jobs
obviously
and Bill
people knew
Gates.
who he was because he created a rocket propelled car.
He has a rocket propelled bicycle he goes around.
Well, now he has that, but it was a car back then. So, and what about the part? I'm sorry that I'm catching. What about the part where they said he was being tried on other things, and he still stuck with that story, and they were even threatening him because they couldn't find this stuff from the past, and that would have been the perfect time for him to say, "Okay, I lied about this," but he stuck with his guns, even facing jail time. Why would anybody do that?
Because he's mentally ill. I don't know.
But in the 90s,
I know because what he would do. He's like
so
saying, there's document proof he's a liar, and that's.
I don't think it's documented. There is no documentation to show
The lack of documentation,
but
that's proof. That's what proof is.
But when you get blacklisted,
lack of proof is
blacklisted and blackballed. I mean, so you honestly
is there proof that the government's ever done that to anybody before? Like scrub
how would there be proof?
That's exactly. Like, has there any documented things of the government actually scrubbing people's background?
So, but obviously this dude had to have a degree, and they couldn't present any degree. You know what I'm saying? There was no accredited university. Isn't that strange to you?
That there's no
documentation of. Let's say it wasn't even MIT. Let's say you went to Eastern Kentucky University. When they tried to find that, they couldn't.
Yeah, because he didn't go there.
Any university?
He didn't go. It said he didn't go anywhere. I'm just saying. I don't know. I wasn't there.
That's what I'm saying. Isn't that weird to you?
It's weird that he doesn't have that. He said he went there and there's no documentation. That's what I'm saying. That's usually what.
But when the police and the parole board cannot find any type of documentation that you went to any university, or much less anything else about your life, because I don't think they could find anything on him. It was like he had just disappeared and vanished. Doesn't that throw up a red flag that okay, somebody's trying to?
No.
So?
That's my point. Though. That's my point. That they can't find anything on him, so he didn't obviously do it.
See, I think the opposite. Because if they looked up Kellen Wimborne, they're going to find out that I went to Eastern and I dropped out. And obviously this man is smart enough.
They keep so many good records for stuff like that.
And you said that you believe that he worked at this Los Alamos installation.
Yeah.
So if you believe that he worked there, he had to be somewhat accredited. Because Los Alamos isn't where he saw the other stuff.
No, but
they didn't have the biometric thing.
And he did bring up something, back in the day, and then like it is now, you could look stuff up on the internet. Back then, it was like everything was filed.
But even that would even make it even more.
But who's to say the government just don't remove those files, and then it's gone? Like
that's what kind of throws up a red flag to me is that they can't find anything. If they found he went to this university, obviously he's a liar.
He didn't go.
He
didn't go.
So this man did not go to college.
No, I mean there's.
Do you think he was even at Area 51, period? Do you think he was ever there?
He may have been. I don't know. There's no proof that he went there.
Okay, but that's once again the question. Los Alamos is a lab, and Area 51 is there. How did this man get there if he had no no education.
That's what I don't know. I mean, he could have been a janitor. That's what I was saying.
Again, but it should throw up a red flag for
He
you.
could have been a janitor. Yeah,
That there's
I
no
don't know.
documentation.
And plus, they could have hired him to do some other kind of work. You don't have to have a degree
not
from
hiring.
MIT to work in.
I bet they don't even have a damn janitor. Like,
Yeah, they
pick
don't.
up after your stuff because they're not going to let anybody
Well, I'm not
in
saying
there.
specifically was. I'm
It's
just
a-
saying. I'm
it's
just
a-
using that as an example of there's other jobs besides like engineers.
It's
at
a
these
military
places.
institute, so they're going to have military personnel taking care of stuff like that, and everybody else is going to be
Yeah, but I'm
someone
saying
that has achieved.
I'm not
top-
saying exactly. You guys are not getting what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's other jobs besides like he doesn't have to be engineer. There's janitor's just a term. I'm saying like there's jobs under him. You're taking janitor literally, but I'm
I
saying like
understand.
there could have been
I
like
know.
other.
I understand
they could be-
perfectly what you're
I
saying.
haven't been there. I don't know that.
But what I'm saying to you is that they have military personnel that would handle that type of stuff. The only type of people that are going to get onto either one of these places are somebody that's going to be able to achieve top flight security clearance. They're not going to let somebody that's an uneducated, straight out of high school fool go. I mean, they're not going to let me in there. That's what I
don't
am.
know. I don't know.
And not only that, but if they did let me on there and somebody vetted me at some point in time, because he had to be vetted. He named the guy that vetted him. It was Mr. Thigpen, and they tracked down Mr. Thigpen later on in life in a different area, and he was able to produce the card where he actually went to that Bob Lazar's house. But my point of it is, if he got onto those bases, they're not going to let him without some type of accreditation. There's going to have to be some type of documentation.
There's no proof that he worked at the government place. I'm just saying he probably. I mean, Los Alamos. There's the book that he worked there. That's why I think he worked there. But I mean,
But it listed him as,
Yeah.
as an engineer. It didn't list him as, Joe Schmo.
could have been. I don't know. Like you're acting like that because there's no evidence, though. Then that means that it's true.
No, but what I'm saying is,
But it's because there's
the
no
fact that
evidence. It
there's-
means it's not true.
the fact that there's no evidence proves to me more likely that what he's saying is true, because this man did not. He owns his own lab. He's able to recreate a rocket. He has a college education. The fact that they look back, they can't find any type of college education on him at all.
Means he didn't go.
That should be a red flag.
Yeah, red flag. He didn't go. And he could have he could have went to school there,
I
and they
think.
could have poked him.
I think you're
poked him
like
out
the
of there.
ultimate pessimist, and the fact that you look at it as that means he didn't go, that shows far more likely.
Well,
that
who would
you-
scrub the thing? The government would go and say, just destroy his file, like go to the registrar,
Don't you think it would
MIT.
like if they were vetting somebody for top secret, even someone
Well, they
like
could have
Los
held
Alamos-
his accreditation and been like, hey, we're keeping this as ransom. If you ever, leak this to the Soviets or anything like that, we'll destroy it. And you
I don't
won't
even
have
think that's the
anything.
case. I think that they would collect as much information on you as possible if you were working at these places, and they would hold the key to that. That way, they have plausible deniability if you ever went off.
But
reservation.
he would also have classmates that have been like, yeah, like I went to school with this guy, like I was in class with this guy. Like that doesn't make them a part of anything bad. They just like, yeah, I know who this guy was.
But the George Knapp said that he found those people.
Yeah, George Knapp, the host of the radio show, talks about
But-
cat ghosts.
Didn't he
But-
also say the Bob said people around him like they were messing with their lives, but he didn't really specifically say who it was or what they were doing to them.
Yeah,
I just don't.
that's true.
So
too.
maybe a couple of them people, classmates, came out and the government got to them, and then you
I just
never
think-
heard
Could
about
have,
it.
yeah, could
When
have
you
done
have
that.
somebody that comes out and says that much stuff, you believe that this part of it is true as far as the propulsion systems, the way that they jump, all that stuff, which is all things that he said back in the 80s. I don't understand why you wouldn't believe this man with the government's long history of denial and absolutely destroying people's lives. I mean, you just look at what Lance Armstrong did to the people that came out and said he took steroids. He ruined those people's lives. You're talking about the federal government, and now all of a sudden there's nothing from this man's life that shows that he did anything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's possible that they destroyed everything. I mean,
And you can't even find a hospital
but I'm just
record
saying
on
it's
a
more
dude.
likely, like when you think of like possibilities and reason. It's obviously that's why I weighed it as more of against him instead for him because there's not as much evidence. It's like a phone book from Los Alamos.
I guess I'll look at everything from the middle, and like you're gonna have to show me one way or the other. I'm not gonna say I do not believe Bob Lazar because they can't produce documentation on it. Because to me, that's the first thing that they would do as far as trying to discredit you. Like if you came out and you released something, and all of a sudden all of your degrees from Morehead State University disappeared, it would make perfect sense to me. But until you show me like where he didn't go there and how he attained all this knowledge of physics and everything else. Because I mean, he was talking some pretty high level physics, and I understand there's smart people that don't go to college that are able to do that, but it would be far less likely for me that everything that he said and all that's true, and then all this documentation just disappeared. I mean, you're not showing me anything. You're just showing me that a file doesn't exist.
Yeah, but you say the same thing about the opposite. The only thing you're saying that shows it's like a book. It's only proof that he from Los Alamos.
But we're just talking about as far as his education. To me, Bob Lazar has said enough things with the biometric systems, the existence of S4, the existence of that element. That all makes me believe him. So,
but why is he still saying that he went to these schools that he has no proof to go? Why would he just give that up if he did?
Exactly. Why wouldn't he?
I mean, because he obviously didn't go.
I mean, maybe, but once again, you're being pessimistic.
Yeah, why would you lie about it? That's what I'm saying. He's a lot. That's what I said.
But why would you lie the other way about it? So you're looking at it from the pessimistic side of it. Why would you?
No,
why would he?
I'm looking at it from reason. That's how you reason things, is with proof and evidence.
But you're talking about the federal government. That there was no proof or evidence of any of these situations before. Now there's proof or evidence of this. Why would they not destroy this little part of it?
I don't know.
I think that you're doting on this little part of it, and that's probably the whole point of it.
Like, while listening to the guy, he just sounded like a calm man, just like talking about his headaches, his migraines, and then, like I said, it just didn't seem very credible to me. And basically, the reason he's not is because, he said he's still saying he went to school, the government's destroying him. How's the government destroyed him, though? Like, besides that, like, what's the government done to him?
Well, once you take away all of your accreditation, people like you are going to be like, "Oh, he didn't go there. He didn't do this."
Yeah, because
they're not going to hire him.
If some random person came up to you outside and said, "Hey, I went to so and so," like, you would just have to take their word for it.
Were they on national news? Were they?
It wasn't on national news. It was like a local TV show. It was a local channel.
It started local.
Yeah, in Las Vegas,
and
or
then
whatever it was.
George Knapp talks about all the way that it went to the United States, all the programs that showed in the United States, and then it was shown internationally. So you're talking about it started locally and it ended up being shown internationally. So you have all of this stuff. It makes perfect sense to me that they would destroy that part of his thing, because people are going to get locked in on this and forget about all of this evidence over here. You're making your case over something like that. And like, to me, there's no burden of proof that he didn't go to any of those places either, because there is no record of this man. They weren't able to find anything on him.
The burden of proof would be he has to show that he's telling the truth.
They weren't even able to find his hometown.
The burden of proof would be he has to show that he's telling the truth.
But I think that certain people, like the way that you're taking such a harsh stance on it, I don't think there's anything that this man can do to show you that. Because you're looking at the documentation, the proof of it.
There's like
he's already
this dude.
given you proof of it.
There's like this nerdy looking dude. He's talking about green men and like spacecrafts flying and stuff. I mean, it's not very believable. I mean, he's got like I said, that there's a whole industry of people making money off of like UFO claims and stuff, like people getting abducted by UFOs and stuff like that. And it takes away credibility from what's actually going on out there. And so you got I'm always skeptical about like crazy people. I don't want to fall for
How many people have you on this podcast and all the conspiracies and everything else that we talked about? Am I no, I believe them? I mean, there's been very few that I've been willing to put my person out there for. And I mean, obviously me and Gross are in the same agreement. Like, he's presented enough evidence over there that this shouldn't be the stumbling block of it. The fact that element 115 exists, the fact that the biometric thing, you got that. The fact that S4 is a thing. The fact that they were able to produce the Los Alamos thing that showed him being an engineer. I mean, once again, these are all
three things out of his giant story that means he's there. But then I got the opposite ones that, there's more against him. Like the fact that it's documented that, like, the government, what else has they done? Just take away his degrees. They haven't came after him any other way. Like,
he's been raided
the prostitution thing, but that's he actually was involved with that. Like, it wasn't set up. I think you're
forever going to be a skeptic, and I think we're going to have to do another podcast in the future where it's big enough story now, because it hasn't been that big of a story. It was a big story in the 80s, but now you have the Netflix documentary. Now you have Joe Rogan. That it's already, I think it had 4 million views when I looked at it last week. Which I think his biggest one was Alex Jones, which was 12 million views. So you've got all these eyes on it now.
I don't think it was never going to be a big story.
It's
never.
It is now.
Like I said about the UFOs, just 2 weeks ago, I said Trump was, vetted by the UFOs and stuff like that, and it wasn't a big story at all. And then the New York Times one, as I said, people don't really. I don't think it's a thing people care about.
I think it's a vested interest for enough people now that they're going to try to prove Bob Lazar is right or wrong, one way or the other.
I mean, he could be right. That's what I'm saying. He could be, but I just think the way I look at him and the way
I don't know.
talk,
I think you went pretty scorched earth there.
Well, the way he talked. No, because you were saying that I'm wrong. Because
no, I'm not saying
no. You're
wrong.
saying that.
I'm saying you're being pessimistic about it.
But I'm not being pessimistic. That's not pessimist. I'm not saying. I'm saying because there's proof behind what I'm saying. That the proof is the lack of proof. And that's all I'm saying. And
but the proof is lack of proof in his education.
Yeah,
but nothing else of the story as far as any of the other things.
But nothing's been shown proven true except for the finger thing, and you're talking about the
existence,
the element. But that's not something that's been proved through anybody else that he knew that.
What else of his story is lacking? That's what I don't understand.
What's it lacking? It's lacking. It's some dude that said he worked there for 6 months and now 30 years has been making a living telling this story. It's been on the radio a billion times, and he's probably got a book out. He's got documentary on Joe Rogan.
I mean, I'm certain.
You don't think he doesn't make anything off?
I'm certain enough that it's probably going to be things that he says is going to continue to be proven, and that I think people are going to be invested one way or the other. And I think that we'll come back and do another podcast, and one of us will have to say I was wrong. I'm sorry, because once again, I think that the only thing that you're dispelling is the education, and I can't disagree with you there.
But I'm saying it makes him proves that he's not telling the truth about a lot of things.
Maybe. Or it might prove that he's telling complete truth and all that.
And the other part of it is just the way he talks. Like the way he was on Joe Rogan podcast.
That's just how it rubs you. But
yeah,
I thought the same way. But whenever you're able to accurately put thoughts together for the rest of the time, and you just have that certain little portion where you're talking about, and maybe he was stressed out enough to have a migraine. I don't know. But whenever you're talking about a guy that goes on for another 60 plus minutes, and is spitting scientific facts and stuff like that, I mean, that shows.
Just because he says them doesn't make them fact, though. That's what I'm saying, too. And I would go as far as believing him, like what he was saying, if I could find some credibility from him anywhere else. Okay. And there is no credibility from him anywhere else.
I don't think he legit like being on camera. He don't look.
Yeah, maybe.
You can put a camera in front of some people and you can tell they eat it up. He isn't one of them people.
Yeah.
I pride myself in watching enough of these programs and everything else that I can pretty much get a pretty accurate assumption of when somebody's full of shit, and I've been vindicated on a lot of instances down the road by that, and I'll either be vindicated in this situation or I'll have to come back on and say, David, you were right, man. But
there's not going to go either way for us because there's not going to be anything coming out.
I really think it will. I think there's going to be enough people that
he just needs to have a classmate come out and say, look, this guy was right. But even then,
don't you think Joe Rogan being on Joe Rogan?
Just listen to the way the guy talked, it just
but let's say that it's probably going to be 6 million people before the end of next week. So 6 million people watch this. There's probably going to be quite a few people that are sympathetic of what he's going through that are probably going to come out if what he says is true and say these things. And there might already be. Let's be honest. We haven't researched into I didn't watch the 1980s documentary. They could have shown all of his paperwork back in the 80s. I don't know, but I think there's going to be enough people that come out now that say one way or the other that.
See, my biggest thing with all these is it's all one sided. They want to. Well, just like me, I want to know, want to believe in this stuff, but they don't show the other side of it, like from a skeptic's view, and then so anybody who watches it's skewed you thinking that it's all true.
Yeah,
and that one documentary kind of did talk about it, like the prostitution thing he got involved in, and his degrees, and they talked about
George
that.
Knapp was the one that turned him in on that.
Yeah.
That was kind of crazy too. But like I said, I just think I'm not concerned about it. I think that he presented enough information outside of what you're talking about that it's convinced me. And if I'm wrong, then I'll say, hey man, I was way off.
But we're never, like I said, I still don't really think either of us are ever going to know.
I think so. I think we will.
It would be nice to know.
I'm sure that if we were having this conversation back in 1988 and we heard everything that he said.
No one would believe.
You took your stance and I took my stance. I mean, there's a lot of information that's came out in the years after that.
People would be like, that dude's crazy.
I don't think our generation, the generation like Gross said, that researches everything online to death and all this stuff, I don't think our generation had heard this story before. And I think now they're involved in it. And I think now when you go to, people cannot wait to tell you I told you so one way or the other. And once this is on the Joe Rogan program, that's what's going to happen. People are going to vet this to death. They're going to beat it to death. They're going to untone it.
It might already be like 1,000 news stories on the guy being like, he was, hero or liar or fraud. Or
I understand completely exactly what you're saying as far as he worked there and you don't know what he did and all this stuff. But what I'm saying is that when you have somebody that comes out and blows a whistle, they're going to try to destroy his life. So it makes perfect sense that they would destroy all that documentation along with it. And that could be me being stupid, but I don't think that this dude just went to high school. And because his mom talked about all of his inventions growing up and all this stuff, because that bicycle you talked about, he apparently invented that when he was like a kid.
Yeah, so the first one he invented.
So I mean, I don't think that a kid like that's probably not going to have every college known to man beating his door down to try to get him at their university, especially back in the 80s, when you had this stuff going on so little, creating bicycles or whatever it may be. So any final thoughts or words there, Gross?
I don't know. You think aliens are real? Do you want them to be real?
Yeah, both.
I do too. That'd be cool as shit.
I think we're all kind of in agreement that.
Yeah, who's to say they're not friendly? Everybody thinks aliens are going to destroy the world. Nobody knows that.
That's because
Mars attacks.
We put what humans would do. If humans were planet hopping, most likely we're just
we're probably
and going
if they're real, we're probably more dangerous than they are.
Probably.
Because I'm sure they're obviously probably a hell of a lot smarter than we are.
I think we do all agree on that, and we all agree that we think there's something else out there.
Something's out there.
That a lot of these videos and stuff are showing unidentified flying objects, whether that be human piloted
I think Bigfoot's real though. So maybe I'm the wrong guy to talk to.
Okay, you just ruined the credibility. I thought I had you in my corner about Bob Lazar, and now all of a sudden we're
blew it up at the end.
And by the way, Jerry's on board with Bob too. So 3 out of 4, one of us is bound to be wrong. So, well, I'll let you go ahead and make your way back to turn off the camera there, big guy. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Write David some hate mail. Write me some hate mail. Tell us what you think, one way or the other, about.
But don't show up at my house.
Who's right? Who's wrong? Okay, Bob.
Bob Lazar. Don't contact me.
But so let us know what you think in the comments section. We're gonna put this on. Obviously YouTube, and then we'll have the links on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure that you tell us what you think on those as well. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your impression of Bob Lazar and aliens as a generalization. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. Next time we're going to have a guest on here, and we won't have a topic, but we're going to try to do a topic like this every couple of weeks, just to try to generate some type of new conversations, especially with the Netflix era where all these new documentaries and stuff are coming out and bringing things to our attention. So appreciate you being on, Gross. As always, appreciate you, David. That's an awesome shirt. Thank you for dressing accordingly. I did not dress. I just wore my Matthew Bradford shirt that you can find on his website, MatthewBradford.com. So we appreciate you guys all tuning in, and we'll see you next time.